Hello and welcome to ChemAfric. In this video, I'll be showing you how to use the caging technique to create structure for the bra cup. In other words, this video is all about bust caging. Here are the three most important materials you need for your bust caging. The collar stay. Now this can be replaced with the soft wording, not the firm one and not the thick one, just the thin wording will do. But collar stay or peplum stay works perfectly. And then you need your ridgeline boning because you can sew along the side of the ridgeline boning and you don't want to start creating channels for the plastic boning. And of course you need your patterns ready. I've already demonstrated how to create this. Now let's get on to work right away. And here is the pattern for the corset, and I've already attached the boning channel to this part, and I'll set it aside. We'll be working solely on the cup. Our first step is to go ahead and transfer the cup onto the fabric, adding the necessary seam allowance. So for this one, I added 1/2 inch seam allowance all round. Note that you must notch the bust point. This will help you when you are joining the pieces together. So this is the side piece of the same corset. So I have two of these, one for the left, one for the right. And because I'm dealing with velvet, I've already ironed in my cloth stay or stay on the fabric to give it some firmness. So I also have lining for each of the piece, and it is on this lining that I've ironed in the collar stay. Okay, I just cut my collar stay exactly the same shape. There are many ways to go about this, but for what I'm doing right now, I ironed in the collar stay, adding the same 1/2 inch so that it just fits exactly into the shape I have for the main fabric. I have the left and the right side of the lining as well, so that leaves us with this. So now let's work on this. So I'll be sewing these two together, the lining with the lining by 1/2 inch, making sure that the notch I created here align with each other. I'll do the same thing for the main velvet fabric, sewing by 1/2 inch along the dart line. Now after joining the pieces together, this is what I have. Next, I'll go ahead to trim the seam allowance till you have just a tiny little bit. Now just proceed with one of the cup, and then I'll repeat the entire process for the other cup as well. So once you are done trimming your seam allowance and you have these tiny bits, it makes the cup to relax better. Now go ahead and I'll mark the seam allowance all round. So this is going to guide me so that I don't mistakenly sew into the seam allowance. Next, I will go ahead to create lines which will serve as a guide for where I'll be attaching the ridgeline boning to. So the first boning we'll be attaching will be on this seam line. So you can go ahead and press open this tiny seam allowance left over. So I'm spacing my boning like 1 inch apart. Let's start this way. So one this way, another here, then so you try to repeat the same process for the other cup so that both sides will be uniform. Okay, use the same number of channels you're creating here for the other one. So here I'll go ahead to also mark. This is going to be like a slight curve because of course you know your cup is curvy. Let's start from this top. So I have this marked. Now the next step is to attach the boning on all the parts I have marked, and I'll be starting with this center. First, I'll go ahead to press open. Now I've chosen to top stitch on the lining because I don't mind having black lines on this lining. So on the other hand, if you don't want any seam to show, even on the lining or on the main fabric, on either of the two, you can just work on the collar stay alone. Okay, you can do all of this on the collar stay separately before pressing the collar stay on the main fabric or even on the lining, so that way you don't have lines showing on the right side of the lining. Now let me quickly say something which I believe I missed up, or I might have missed saying initially. Because I'm working on the lining, this is how it's going to sit on the body, okay? So not like this, okay? Because it is the lining, so it will act as a structure for the main fabric, which will be covering it this way, and we'll have this plain part on the inside, the part that will be touching the body. Now when you're fixing the boning, don't fix it like this. So remember that this is going to be curving outward at the end of the day, so make your boning follow this outward curve like this. I hope you get what I mean. So you're not fixing your boning curving inward, you are going to fix it following the curve this way. Okay, so let it curve outward, or should we call it inward now, this way, but you understand what I mean, right? Yeah. So now I'm making the last crossing on this. This is what I have so far, so I'll place it this way, okay, not inward like this. Remember, we're following the curve on the ridgeline boning, so this way. So I can then push it outward so that it will be easier, push it inward rather, so that it will be easier for me to sew on. Now I'm done crossing with the ridgeline boning, so you can see what we have here. Now the next stage is to attach the boning all around the base. Now this is a very good alternative for warden and the commercial bra cups, and gives very nice structure. In addition to that, once you attach your boning all around this curve, you won't need an underwire, because this will already create a lift at the under bust for you. So a very nice replacement for it. Now this can be tricky to sew. Just take your time and sew gradually. And if you also notice that your thread is cutting as you're sewing on the ridgeline boning, especially for tiny ridgeline boning like this that has very little seam allowance on the side, so you can easily be stepping on the actual boning. I hope you understand what I mean. So that way your thread can keep cutting. Just, you know, try to work with the allowance you have, and if peradventure that happens, just go ahead and thread again and continue sewing. But this is what the outside look like. So even though you can see the same lines, it is neat and actually lovely. Now let's move ahead to attach boning all around the base of the cup. I'm done attaching the underboning. Permit me to use that term. And this is what we have on the outside, this is what we have on the inside. I'll repeat this entire process for the other cup, and we'll go ahead to attach this onto the bodice. Now this is the bodice, the main fabric, and I also have something similar for the lining. Okay, now I'll be attaching the one we just created structure for on the lining and sewing by 1/2 inch. That's the same allowance I added to this piece in the first place. So by 1/2 inch, I'll do the same thing on this side. While on the main fabric, I'll be sewing this, which is the main piece of the cup, with cloth tape pressed on. So I'll be joining by 1/2 inch round the cup. So this is the lining, because for the fabric it's just straightforward, right? So I'll be showing you how to sew the cup onto the lining here. So you want to make sure that you have pinned your cup on the bodice properly, align the same allowances. So remember that you are sewing a curve against a curve, so it can be pretty dicey, but just take your time and do it gradually. I'm sewing by 1/2 inch. So this is what we have now. So next you go ahead, place your cup under the breast ball and give it a good press. And also the main fabric, ensure that you notch the dart line on the bra cup and open up your same allowance like this. Then you also need to notch round the bust cup you have just sewn. So for this, just trim out the excess allowance we have here, and then we can then proceed to sew this together as you wish, to close up the hem, or you attach your yoke depending on what you're making. Okay, so here we have it, our bust cup, cage and fix on this corset. Thank you very much. See you in the next video. Bye.